Welcome back to Love, Money, Rock and Roll. We left off in the middle of a conversation with Himitsu. Because we're being a jerk to everybody. Because nothing's going on. There's totally stuff going on, like the fact that kids got murdered at school and stuff, but besides that. I responded unsurely. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Fine, yeah, it was Asakura and her gang who painted over my door and broke the window. At least they didn't try to deny it. But why? What problem did they have with you? Mitsu finally sounded normal again. Let's just say I decided I couldn't tolerate injustice. But I'm sure their murder has nothing to do with that. Injustice? Remember Kagome? We saw her being bullied at the school gate a couple weeks ago. Kagome-senpai. Himitsu repeated without much emotion. I got tired of watching them pick on her all the time. It's strange, Nikolai, that you paid attention to someone other than yourself. So, you think I did the wrong thing? I don't know, Nikolai, it's your life. Look, don't you think that's already enough? Enough of what? Acting like you don't care. Since when do you care about my opinion? Since always? Then you've been hiding it very well. My reaction was apparently very strange, because Himitsu suddenly laughed. You should have seen yourself just now, Nikolai. If you tell me everything without leaving anything out, you'll feel better. I really doubted that. But the prospect of being left completely alone was even scarier. Not sure I trust you. Kagome was suspected of murder, even if only by Ellie for now. But the police would follow soon enough, I was sure of that. Yeah, I had a band to play in. But what did it matter when I was alone as soon as I stepped out of the studio? I need to think. Fine, take your time. I'll drop by tonight, still have a lot of things to do. Alright, thank you. For what? For being here. Mitsu smiled suspiciously. Asakura and Kawashima really did choose a terrible time to die. Just when things finally seemed to be getting better. Wow, that is a very dark thought. I was walking back and forth, my mind busy endlessly running through different scenarios of what could happen next. Even if the police suspected Kagome, she could easily have an alibi. Why hadn't I thought to ask her right away? And if she really did have one, then things were really going to get more complicated. Was it really easier for me to believe that Kagome was the murderer? Yes. Yes, it is. To distract myself from these dark thoughts, I took the bass guitar and started learning the new songs I'd been given. I found an old book on solfeggio in a closet, which helped me to quickly grasp the basics. And that was just enough to understand the rows of symbols that I had previously found illegible. It's interesting to see how a part of you initially found impossible becomes simple with enough practice. Yep. You just have to play it 100 times. Practice, practice, practice. It was getting late, my fingers hurt, and my back was numb from sitting in the same position for so long. I had to take a break, but I kept telling myself, just one more song, then stop. I probably would have played to the point of total exhaustion if the doorbell hadn't rung. Oh, hey, Ellie. Thank you. I blurted out round the doorstep. For what? If not for you, I would have played myself to death on my bass. Please come in. Ellie was noticeably nervous and wasn't even trying to hide it. I came for a reason, actually. Oh, Himitsu's about to show up, isn't she? That would make a lot of sense. I think it's Murphy's Law. If something can go bad or go wrong, it will. And here I was hoping you just missed me. I was trying to make a stupid joke, but she clearly wasn't in the mood. It's about your friend Kagome. Since when are we friends? Sure seems like it from the outside. Well, you know. I crossed my arms and walked around the kitchen. I've already told you, her father went missing and I decided to help. Do you help every girl you come across? She asked without any anger, but there was an unusual interest in her voice. Only the ones that need it. I grumbled in response. Alright, what will you do if I say I need help? My friends have been murdered. Murdered by your friend, acquaintance, call it whatever you want. I really don't think that. Wait, I'm not done yet. Even if there could be any doubt after the principal's speech, her reaction. How would you have reacted if you were her? I'm not her, thank goodness. I've already told you that. I don't want to put myself in anyone's shoes. My own are problematic enough. Fine. What do you think we should do? We should at least tell the police. How about we tell your father? Or grandfather, yeah. You think they wouldn't figure out that Kagome and your friends weren't on good terms without us? Of course they will, but... Ellie frowned, as if I was to blame for her lack of a plan to put Kagome behind bars. Then I need to talk to my grandfather, tell him everything. Now that's definitely a really good idea. You do realize that your grandfather isn't a fan of half measures, right? What if she's not guilty? Do you want an innocent person to suffer? To be honest, for whatever reason, nothing else comes to mind. I blurted out, but Ellie paid no attention. I just can't wait. What if they don't find the killer? She walked to the table, sat behind it, and folded her arms in front of her. Now how about we let the police do the work? I know I don't have any reason to give you advice. My friends weren't the ones killed, but I still think you're better off thinking things through so you don't do something stupid. My words made no sense. I was just doing my best to distract her from the thought of turning Kagome in. No matter to who, the police or her grandfather. But then I tried to put myself in Ellie's place. How would I feel if Kyosuke and Maiko were killed, and the main suspect was just smirking brazenly at me? Kagome seemed to be almost asking for the blame, regardless of whether she was guilty or not. To start with, we have no evidence. Now, that's definitely the police's job. So, do you actually think they're capable of finding the murder weapon, collecting fingerprints, and figuring out the motive on their own? The motive here is clear as day. I wouldn't be so hasty. Mutual dislike, bullying, sure. But 8 people? Do you really think that Kagome alone could? What if she had an accomplice? Who, her grandfather? He looks a century old. How would I know? I don't want to continue this conversation. If I tried to keep arguing with her, she'd act like a spoiled child and do the opposite of what I said just because. I couldn't support her accusations against Kagome for many reasons, so the only options I had left were sophistry and trickery. Let's assume you're right. Sunday evening, Kagome kills 8 people. Then Monday morning she goes to school as if nothing happened, right? Well, she's crazy. I'm sure I wouldn't upset her if I said Kagome does have issues with socialization, but you're talking about psychopathy now. Does she look like a psychopath to you? Well, no, I don't know. Psychopaths can pretend to be normal. Those, what are they called? Sociophobes. Sociopaths? Whatever, sociopaths, what's the difference? Sure, in many senses, Kagome was in opposition to the existing social order, but only because she understood it well and had to adapt. So that hypothesis wasn't valid either. What do you want from me? I came here so you'd comfort me, not listen to a lecture about forensic psychiatry. Really? Yeah, Himitsu and Catherine were hardly alike. I didn't want you to think that I... Relax, I was joking. At that moment I heard Himitsu's voice coming from the hall. Are you not alone? She had promised to drop by in the evening. Was it evening already? Nikolai? Nikolai. But Himitsu's appearance didn't seem to embarrass her in the slightest. Sorry, I didn't know you had a guest. Kobayashi-senpai? Himitsu lowered her head and seemed to grow smaller. All this excessive politeness looked silly, even comical. I won't bother you. She turned around but Ellie stopped her. No, I should be going anyway. Sorry. What's the matter with her? It's a long story, where do I even start? Is she your... No, we're just friends. Childhood friends, been living across from each other for 10 years, so... So what? So that's it. Alright, I'm glad. About what? About the fact that you've got normal friends too. Her words made me feel awkward. Mitsu's almost like family to me. In fact, now after my parents' death, I have no one closer than her. And you've been like this all this time alone? Yeah, I've gotten used to it. Sorry, I shouldn't have said all that. She jumped from the chair. It's alright, no worries, really. In any case, now I think you're right. I'm not going to tell Grandpa anything for now. Thanks for that. And don't forget, we have a rehearsal on Wednesday. Rehearsal? I thought you needed some time to, well, you know. I got used to it too. See ya. Got used to what? Well, we let Mitsu down. Good. That's what this is all about. Niju ni. 22. The new day started unusually early for me. I got up determined to learn why Kagome was behaving like she was. Was I really suspecting her? When you have eliminated the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth, right? But if anything, relationships should follow the laws of quantum mechanics, where the event is inseparable from its observer. And if I were to imagine that Kagome really... The image of Charles Manson kept showing up in my mind's eye, the inappropriate comparison with Kagome making me smile, albeit blasphemously. I spent a long time washing my face and in the end decided to take a shower. I made several butter broads with cheese for breakfast. Buta. It's probably a bread or something. Why don't the Japanese eat them? I remember when I was little, they made up most of my breakfasts and dinners. Sure, normal sandwiches offer more variety in terms of filling, but the beauty of this Soviet cuisine is in its simplicity. A slice of white bread with butter and sugar can be a great substitute for a cookie. Rye bread, which you can't find anywhere in Japan, with sunflower oil and salt makes for a fine snack. Shuki, baranki, bubaki. Bread is the stuff of life. The Russian version of the proverb that Nikolai uses here to refer to, or to bread specifically rather than food in general. Yeah, bread is pretty good. Love making homemade bread. Of course, they couldn't know that only yesterday, 8 innocent students had been brutally murdered. Although surely it wasn't a record high for Tokyo's daily crime stats. I don't know the exact numbers, but what did it matter anyway? Statistics show everything about the life of a population, but absolutely nothing about the life of an individual. I was one of the first to come to school. It felt a little strange sitting in an empty classroom, and at some point I felt strange anxiety swelling up in my throat. Dozens of completely unbelievable scenarios started to play out in my head one after another. There were 2 detectives from yesterday accusing me of the murders. Then there was an armed squad from Kobayashi Corporation breaking down the door and shooting everyone dead. And then a meteor fell to Earth right on top of our school. When the first yawning students started to appear in the classroom, I felt somewhat calmer, and even started a meaningless conversation with the few, even though I rarely talked to anyone besides Kyosuke and Michael. Kagome came right before the bell rang. She didn't look much like Charles Manson's daughter, at least outwardly. I confidently approached her during break and said, determined, "We need to talk." "Sure." She shrugged and stood up. Alright, time to accuse her of murder. If that's an option. The closer October got, the more uncomfortable it was to be up in the roof in only a single layer of clothing. Do you know what I want to say? I do. What? It feels like you want to be accused of these murders. If she has come to a decision already, what does it matter what I want? Kagome responded calmly, as if we were talking about something utterly mundane. Who's she, Ellie? Do you think she personally controls Kobayashi Corporation? Or maybe the police? Maybe she runs the entirety of Japan. If not her, then her grandfather. Wait, I was beginning to understand. You think you've been framed? Don't you? I think killing 8 people for that is a bit much. 1 would do the trick. But 8 is more convincing. And who do you think would want that? You tell me. What do I have to do with it? You talked to her grandfather. Only because he called me up there. As you might recall, you weren't invited. Of course, I'm a girl. Kagome smirked. Christ, you could have as well been in an attack helicopter. I'm sure it is reasons. Besides, I relayed the entire conversation to you. Maybe you really believe what you're saying. But it doesn't make my life any easier. The only thing not making your life easier is your own actions. You could have just denied everything from the start. Yeah, and how would that help? She bared her teeth. What are you even accusing me of? Do you even know any of the details about the murders? Where they happened? What the murder weapon was? Do you know anything apart from what the principal said yesterday? No. But you could at least say that you had an alibi. For what time? If it happened at night, it must have. I was sleeping in my room alone. The only person who confirmed that is my grandfather, but you saw him. Still, now I had a better grasp of what she was thinking. I still think you're going overboard. I don't know if it's fatalism or whatever, but you can't actually believe this is out of your control. But you tell me what I should do then. Sure, don't provoke Ellie. Didn't you just tell me she can't do everything? Maybe she didn't actually control things, but she was very capable of complicating Kagome's life. Just don't. You aren't in a position to. To what? Nothing. This conversation started to really get on my nerves. So, you aren't gonna listen to me? Fine. She agreed begrudgingly. I'll keep quiet, but it won't change a thing, you'll see. Better safe than sorry. We returned to the classroom, and the following classes passed without any incident. Oh, we're back to the cafeteria. During lunch break, I went to the canteen with Michael and Kyosuke. It had an unusually large number of free seats, and the students sitting in the queue or sitting behind the tables looked like they were there for a funeral, not lunch. Do you guys also think the atmosphere is a little heavy? No wonder. Well, Mike is trying to say that this is a terrible tragedy for our school. I really don't care. Oh, well, we had no clue. I scoffed without much irritation. Well, now I'm gonna tell you something you definitely have no clue about. What? You aren't curious at all? Tell us already. I talked to Dad and learned some details about the murders. Really? I'd always thought his father was some low-ranking government employee. I know you've always believed in me, but come on, this isn't a game. Fine. They were all killed inside an abandoned warehouse. He named the district. Shot, to be precise. I could label this clique as all I wanted in my mind. But what could they be doing inside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city on a Sunday night? They were rich kids, not drug addicts with a track record. And they were shot, which meant Kagome clearly had nothing to do with it. Are you sure? My own father wouldn't lie to me, would he? No, he wouldn't. I repeated and looked at him more closely. I mean, if it's the same warehouse, Kagome kidnapped Ellie, then... well... wouldn't put it past her. What do you think? I asked Michael. I don't know yet, we don't have enough facts. Take a guess. My guesses won't help crack the case. We aren't trying to crack anything. Why not? I think this is pretty interesting. People died, Kyosuke. This isn't a detective novel. I know that perfectly well. He said in the tome of Kiyama-sensei. The police will take care of that. Police, he grumbled. I've been reading a manga recently. Suddenly, he stopped himself, blushed, went silent, and focused on his udon. As for me, it seems very strange that 8 students from good families suddenly ended up in some abandoned warehouse at night. What do you think, Michael? I guess it is. Seeing his reaction, you'd think we were discussing a boring TV show. So, there must have been a reason for it. Or they were brought there. To be killed? Maybe. Which means there's no way a single person could have done it. Who says it was one person? Nobody, I'm just thinking out loud. Alright guys, I've got something really important to do, so I'll leave you here. Kyosuke giggled idiotically, but Michael didn't react in any way. Maybe it was Himitsu. She seems to really not like us right now. Who knows? Without bothering to drop by our classroom, I headed directly for the old school wing. Hi. Ellie was sitting behind the piano, clearly bored, looking out the window. Oh, hi. She responded emotionlessly. Why the long face? Well, I get it, I have news. What news? I learned from a classmate that your friends were murdered together on Sunday night in an old abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. They were shot. That can't be. What would they be doing there? That's the first thing I thought. Can your classmate be trusted? He has no reason to lie. He could have mixed something up. I mean, that's possible, sure. Ellie was staring me down, cold determination in her eyes. Right now, she bore an elusive resemblance to Kobayashi Jun, which I couldn't help but find disturbing. Well, I know what district's it in, but we're going there tonight. Are you sure that's a good idea? If it's true, I have to see it for myself. There must be police there, they won't let us in. If there are police, then at least it'll mean your classmate wasn't lying. It didn't look like I could change her mind. How do you think her grandfather would react to that? I don't care. I asked him what really happened, but he didn't tell me anything. Maybe he's protecting my feelings or whatever, but I'm not a child anymore. He can't keep me on a short leash my entire life. I mean, I agree, but if you don't want to, I'll go there alone. Fine, we'll go together, but if something happens, I've warned you. Great. Then I'll drop by your place tonight at 10. My house was most likely under surveillance, so it was a bad idea. Let's meet at the station instead. Why? Are you afraid of something? You'll just be quicker. Alright, then 10 o'clock at the station. And don't be late or I'll leave without you. The school day ended without any further incidents. Mitsu wasn't waiting for me at the gate, and home met me with its usual silence. Ellie's idea seemed stupid, but not necessarily dangerous. The police would probably be there, so most likely we just wouldn't be allowed near the crime scene. There was nothing to fear. But the mere thought was making me tremble inside. Something was wrong. Some almost imperceptible deviation in the harmonious model of the universe that was threatening my very existence. How would Kyosuke's father learn the details of the crime in the first place? Why had these poor students really been killed? The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Even the fact that Kagome was no longer the main suspect didn't bring me any peace. Because now anyone could be. And then 8 people at the same time. If it was a warning, even a blind man would have noticed it. Although that was hard to believe. Evolutionarily, humans are programmed to find patterns everywhere. If the bushes next to you move at night, there must be a wild animal hiding in them. Or a person. It is better to be safe than sorry and build absolutely surreal causal links in order to stay alive. Rational but dead Homo sapiens don't propagate their genes. As early as 9:30, I was nervously shifting from one foot to another at the station, occasionally glancing at the clock. It was noticeably colder in the evening. Autumn was gently but persistently driving summer to rest. I was constantly looking around on my way to the station, trying to find anyone following me, but noticed nothing. I wonder how Irina would have reacted if she knew where I was going tonight. And with who? Ellie came at 10 o'clock sharp. I found the exact place. She exclaimed instead of a greeting. I asked her butler to help. He tried to deny it at first, but when I told him I knew almost everything, he had no choice. Nicely done. Oh boy. My favorite. Well, we can tell her bodyguard isn't Kagemaru. He wouldn't tell her anything. All the way there, Ellie looked somewhat reserved, constantly staring into space. We left the subway at the station in the port district of Tokyo. I filled my lungs with the unusually fresh air. Have you never taken the subway or something? Of course I have. Ellie asked with slight offense. What's up then? What? You looked like you were taking an exam you were totally unprepared for. Yeah, imagine that. I don't visit murder scenes every day. I told you it was a bad idea. Too late now. She waved me away and looked around. If my butlers are believed, we need to go there. The industrial district turned out to be much scarier at night than I could have imagined. In the darkness, the endless rows of identical warehouses resembled giant petrified mastodons. Motionless, they still commanded respect for their prior greatness, even if long forgotten. There wasn't a soul around, and that scared me more than any potential criminals that could be nearby. It seemed like I was left alone on Earth, if not for Ellie next to me. Looks like we're here. She stopped near a building that looked just like the others. Are you sure? They're all the same. Well, yeah, see for yourself. Indeed, there was police tape hanging from the gate. I guess you're right, but we're the police. I was starting to feel seriously uneasy. Alright, you've seen it. Let's go. What? Getting cold feet? Oh my goodness. Are we gonna have to go inside of there? That really seems like a bad idea. Aren't you? Ever heard of the self-preservation instinct? But there's no one here. Give it to me. We walked around the building several times but noticed nothing interesting, so they were killed inside. But we won't find there. I guess not, but... I could hardly imagine what happens when a person gets shot in real life. In movies, you sometimes see literal liters of blood splashing all over the place, even from a minor wound. But there had to be some traces left, right? Nick? Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking. Maybe you're right, we shouldn't. Suddenly, someone's shadow flickered in the light. Ellie shot and jumped to me. Who's there? My voice was trembling. A person stepped out of the darkness. Nick? Ellie sunk her fingernails into my hand so hard I almost shouted. We had to run, but I was so paralyzed by fear my legs refused to obey me. Calm down already. And then Kagome stepped into the light. What are you doing here? The same thing as you. I assume I came to see the crime scene. But how? It wasn't hard to follow you. Follow us? Wait. Had Kagome been watching my house until evening and then followed me to the station so while I hadn't noticed boarded the train? No, that sounded ridiculous. How she even found out I was going somewhere tonight? You're lying. Maybe I am. Kagome shrugged, nonplussed. But think for yourself. Why would I return to the crime scene and reveal myself to you? Because you're crazy. This is too much. What are you trying to do? What am I trying to do? She repented to think about it, but immediately smirked. What does it matter? Whatever I say, she won't ever believe me. Now you won't either. Kagome was stubbornly digging herself a deeper and deeper grave, ignoring all logic and common sense. Nick, let's leave. I'm scared. Can you explain what you're doing? Maybe I just enjoy making you miserable. Fine. You wanted to see this crime scene. So did I. I need to know what I'm being accused of. Ellie was pulling my sleeve. I couldn't understand what Kagome was doing here. And she definitely had a reason to behave the way she was. How did you even end up here? I told you. Yeah, I don't believe it. You weren't following me. I would have noticed. You know what? Fine. I've done everything I could. We reached the station without saying a word to each other. The last train brought us to the city center. Will you make it home? Don't worry, I live nearby. And you? I'll make a call. They'll pick me up in a car. What will your grandfather say? I don't care. Ellie hadn't smiled once in the last hour. The usual twink in her eye was nowhere to be found. Well, alright then. Could you stay with me for a bit? She asked quietly and sat on a bench. I sat next to her. Ellie looked exhausted and was just staring at Kobayashi Corporation's office. You've been there, right? I have. I always thought it was a terrible place. All that steel, concrete, and glass. It seems undead. Like a metal monster from a children's fairy tale. She made a little smile but immediately lowered her head. You think I'm stupid, don't you? Not at all. Why would you think that? You'd think that having been recovered from the shock of it, Ellie would start cursing Kagome, but she looked as if she was to blame for everything that happened. Because you told me we shouldn't go there and I didn't listen. Well, yeah, I did, but you know, now I think it wasn't for nothing. What do you mean? I really didn't expect to meet Kagome, but maybe it's for the better. So, you also think she's the murderer? I don't know what to think anymore. The wind grew stronger and Ellie shivered. Immediately stood up, took off my jacket and put it over her shoulders. Thank you. I thought you'd resist a bit for the sake of decency. Accept what you're given, run when you're beaten. She answered calmly and buttoned it up a little tighter. The words of a true lady. Ellie laughed, but almost immediately looked up at me and asked seriously, what should I do next? You asking if you should tell your grandfather? A couple hours ago, I would have said it was a bad idea, but now I'm not so sure. I feel like we all have a choice to make. I started cracking my knuckles. Ellie noticed and slapped me on the hands. You still need them for rehearsal tomorrow. Right, the rehearsal. Don't tell me you forgot. I didn't, it just left my mind. Yeah, maybe it's not the best time for this. Ellie smiled sadly, lowered her head again, like she was guilty of something. And here I thought, giving up in the face of difficulties wasn't your style. Do you really think so? Absolutely. Well then. Ellie stood up. The familiar spark flared in her eyes again. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am. I saluted her in farewell. But still, how did Kagome manage to follow me so effortlessly? I was walking home down the streets of nighttime Tokyo, glancing back every now and then. Or had she not actually followed anyone at all? Then how did she learn what the crime scene was? It's like she was doing everything so she could make herself the suspect of these murders. A strange way to find her father. The colder it got, the darker the nights. Maybe it was the Earth's rotation or whatever, but it is at night when you can feel the departure of the summer the most. During the day, the sun still shone strongly enough to create the false illusion of warm weather, but the coming of twilight set things as they ought to be. Sometimes I would have noticed a late drunkard idly trudging along the other side of the street, but no one ever walked in my direction. The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner by Iron Maiden played in my head, and I smirked at the clear discrepancy between reality and my thoughts. If somebody really was following me now, did they just realize I just felt cold and wasn't trying to run away from anything or anyone? On the other hand, if that was possible, I'd probably be sprinting ahead with all my might, having cast every thought out of my mind. It was just as cold inside the house as outside, even colder after I finally stopped and started to cool down. I could heat up the kokatsu, but wasn't it too early? I looked at the clock now. It was time for sleep, But first, a hot bath. I still failed to grasp some Japanese traditions even after so many years. For example, sitting in a hot bath daily. Although sitting would be an overstatement, considering the size of the bath and my height. It was more like folding over myself. But it was exactly what I needed after a marathon in the cold. Unlike the Japanese, I climbed into the warm bath first, sat there for about 10 minutes, and only then washed myself. Ah, a true man. Theoretically, the heat should have made me even more drowsy, but lying in bed, I felt somewhat rested. Thoughts about Kagome came back with a vengeance. Yeah, she seemed a bit odd to me from the start, but I could have never imagined anything like this. I couldn't seriously believe that Kagome killed 8 people, but I also had no idea what to think of her behavior. Maybe I was just afraid of her? That thought made waves of anxiety rise from somewhere in my stomach. Kobayashi-jun, Arena, they made me feel an understandable fear. There was nothing strange or unnatural about that. Prey is afraid of its hunter. From an evolutionary standpoint, it was logical. But in terms of my feelings for Kagome, there was something fundamentally different. Perhaps this was the one fear that we should ever fear, as some American presidents said. I don't get what that is. An existential fear, the fear of the unknown, the strongest of them all, so psychologists claim. I didn't know what she was capable of, and couldn't quite match the image of a quiet class representative with the maniacal cruelty of a murderer, even in views of the facts, despite her strange behavior. The most terrifying creatures in Japanese folklore are changelings. Maybe I'd spent too much time living in this country? Probably. Niju-san. 23. I woke up with a headache, feeling like I'd been worked over with sticks the whole night. Jesus, I was just sick of it all. Every day was the same, just a whole heap of new problems. I pushed myself up slightly in bed and punched the pillow several times as hard as I could. It probably hadn't done anything wrong. Still, it wasn't like the pillow could punch back. Yet. I didn't want to go to school. Didn't want to get up at all. I couldn't believe my life would ever change for the better anymore. Finally, I managed to drag myself out of bed. I had to choose the better of two evils, when I didn't have the strength to choose at all. But if that's how bad I felt, what about Kagome? Sure. Saying she was acting strangely would be an understatement, but her father was missing after all. So I decided to give it one last try and figure out what was really going on with Kagome. The cold of the night had disappeared without a trace. The sun seemed to be feeling guilty for having failed to heat the earth yesterday and leaving me cold, so it was shining like it was summer. The last warm days of September always create the illusion that autumn will never come. People on the street smiled at me and I occasionally did the same. In the end, my decision to get out of bed turned out to be correct. In the classroom, I was immediately assaulted by Kyosuke. Well, Nick, what's the news? Got none at all. Am I supposed to have any? You tell me. He looked at me as if I owed him money. If you're gonna play detective again, please leave me out of it. What? Can't I even ask a question anymore? Kagome appeared in classroom right before the bell. I wondered if she found it as hard to get up each morning the same way I did. I spent the entire first class observing Kagome and failing to find anything unusual about her behavior. She wasn't stiff, zoned out, or overly focused on something. There was nothing to give away the stress that would be natural in this situation. While I was fidgeting on my chair and eagerly waiting for the break, she was carefully making notes and listening to the teacher. Had we really seen the same girl at the crime scene yesterday? Finally, the bell rang. I quickly stood up and rushed to her desk. We need to talk. What, again? Kagome rolled her eyes but didn't object. We went up to the roof. Over the past couple of weeks, this place had started to disgust me. People often associate the most neutral situations and events with something dangerous or unpleasant. Can you explain how you ended up at the warehouse again? Kagome's entire body was telling me she had no interest in this conversation, her hands linked but behind her back, her eyes directed out of Tokyo's central business district. I've already told you I followed you. That's not true. I checked. Nobody followed me from home. Then you're bad at checking. She shrugged her shoulders without turning to me. Do you think you can convince me you're a real detective? You two saw it with your own eyes. We saw you there yesterday, that's true. But you could have found out where the murders happened on your own. And how would I do that? I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is, I sighed heavily and continued. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you deliberately making people suspect you? The way you're acting is unnatural and even stupid, but you're not stupid. Thanks for the compliment. Maybe I'm the one who killed them. Has the thought crossed your mind? It has? And what do you think? Everything indicates that that's the truth. That I'm the killer, you mean? Kagome smirked, and you're not doing anything to change my mind. Why would I? I don't know. I sighed and sat down on a bench. Why do you even care about them? You clearly weren't friends. People died, students at the school. It could have been us, don't you understand? But it wasn't the guilt of an unrepentant killer. What matters is that it's not you or Kobayashi they're suspecting. What does Ellie even have to do with it? You like to keep your darling out of it. I understand. What? I'm glad you followed my advice. There's nothing between us. The more you try to deny it. She made a face and gave me an angry look. You think I'm just being humble? Who would refuse? Especially Kagome. Well, whatever. She shrugged her shoulders and quickly walked past me to the exit. This conversation, just like every other before it, left me with nothing. But for some reason, I was almost certain Kagome wasn't the murderer. Was it one imperceptible shift of the eyebrows, a twitch of the mouth, or an elusive look that was enough? For me, maybe. Would it be enough for the police? No, probably not. I didn't talk to her for the rest of the school day. Kyosuke would often pester me with the pointless chatter, but my thoughts were elsewhere. If it wasn't her, then who? The more I thought about it, the stronger the sense that the killings weren't random. I obviously couldn't think that I was the focal point of everything happening around me. Couldn't make everything happening around me about myself. But it was hard to believe that this case was just a coincidence. You win millions in the lottery, and the next day you meet a girl who falls for you at first sight. Catherine returns to Japan, and I find a written warning on my note that very evening. 8 students at my school die, and there were more than enough ways to finish that sentence. I didn't even want to think about some of them. Ellie was waiting for me at the school gate after classes, looking around impatiently. Hey, here you are, let's take a walk. I obediently followed her. Oh boy, a walk. You know, I was thinking about a conversation the whole night, and you told your grandfather everything? Well, you also said yesterday. I didn't say that. But you... Sure, I hadn't told her not to say anything. What exactly did you tell him? Nothing much, really. Ellie suddenly grinned at me. My friends were killed, remember? I told him one of the girls at the school had a problem with him. More like the other way around. They had problems with Kagome. And that she's acting weird. Of course, you very prudently didn't mention the part where we met her at the warehouse. Yes. Ellie replied quietly and puckered her lips. No reason why Grandpa should know where I was yesterday. Uh-huh. I smirked sadly. What now? Are you gonna say it's my fault? No, it's not. But you've probably written Kagome a death sentence. You're trying to make my grandfather look like some cold-blooded cutthroat again. Do you really think he hasn't broken the law at least once in his life? And do that in a conversation with Ellie. She kept quiet. She kept silent for quite a while. I'm sure she's in no danger. Then why tell him in the first place? Because... Ellie wrapped her arms around herself and made such a plaintive face that I immediately felt ashamed for attacking her. I just couldn't keep it bottled up inside, going to school with that monster. You realize that she couldn't just do it physically. 8 people. You saw her yourself at the crime scene yesterday. Does an innocent person look like that? Do they act like that? Maybe Kagome's guilty of something. Maybe she just came to gloat. I couldn't give a decisive answer to the question. If that's true, that she's too sure of her impunity. What's gonna happen to her now? A simple glance at Kagemaru was enough to know Kobayashi-jun's methods. Was Ellie's suspicion enough for her grandfather to give an order? I tried to put myself in that position. 8 students from the same school as his granddaughter were killed in one night. Moreover, some of them weren't friends, and the murderer is still at large. Would that be enough? No, more than enough, I'd say. Even if Ellie believed her grandfather wasn't capable of killing a girl, what of it? But thinking about it, what could I even do? Was I supposed to do anything? No, just leave it alone, Nikolai. Yes, Ellie and I have the reasons in the world to suspect Kagome, but what did Kobayashi-jun know? Fear takes molehills for mountains, after all. One way or another, I could at least warn Kagome. You didn't forget we have a rehearsal today, did you? No, I didn't. I lied even though I hadn't thought about it once today. But I needed to drop by my place first. Sure, it's too early anyway. Alright then, see you later. See you later. Luckily Ellie didn't notice. I was strolling down a normal Tokyo street and imagining that just 100 years ago, there'd been a dense forest in its place, or some rickety hotels, hovels nestling up to each other. 100 years was more than an average person's lifespan, but what is it in terms of human history? And if there really had been trees, they could have been several hundred years old. In that case, 1,000 and 10,000 years ago, there used to be wild nature here just like everywhere else on Earth. What would happen in another 100 years then? Would this place become a spaceport instead? Not that any of us would live long enough to see it. Meanwhile, Kagome had a real chance not to live to see tomorrow. Well, those were just my assumptions. We'll make 2 saves here. And if we happen to get a bad ending by being a jerk, well, then we'll figure it out. I imagine Kagome's probable reaction, her perpetually annoyed face and caustic remarks. Dig your own way out. When I arrived home, I got the sense I came too early. Not that there was much to prepare, only myself morally. I made some tea and several sandwiches and slowly ate them in front of the TV. I took a freshly ironed by Himitsu shirt out of the wardrobe, tried it on inside. Our last meeting hadn't ended the way I wanted it to at all. Besides, now we're playing in the same band. Not that she had to know that for the time being. The time passed slowly, even more so since I was checking it out every 2 minutes. But any wait is bound to end at some point. And we're back. I came to rehearsal half an hour early again, but I wasn't the first to arrive. Tokyo Rider was standing behind the synthesizer playing some synth pop. It sounded very futuristic. Hey, he noticed me and gave a slight nod. Listen, I've wanted to ask you for a while. What do you actually do in life? He finally tore himself away from the keys and gave me a sly glance over his glasses. I'm not dancing to the corporate tune if that's what you mean. What, can you really make a living playing music? Everything is possible if you put in enough effort. And if you're lucky, he added slyly. Ishida and Mitsuyashi's entrance meant we couldn't continue our thrilling conversation. Hi, Nick. Hey there. Good afternoon. I gave a reserved response to their greetings. No matter what they said to me, our relationship as a group followed the Kohai Senpai model. Talking, it's a hierarchy system. Nice. Why so tense? Something happened? No, I replied hesitantly. Of course I was still thinking about Kagome. Had I done the right thing by leaving her alone with her problems, by not warning her? You must be waiting for Elle? The drummer chuckled. Mitsuyoshi. Ishida lightly jabbed his side with an elbow. I didn't say anything. Ellie appeared right in the studio right on time. Sorry, I didn't really prepare. She ran into the room, and before even catching her breath, started apologizing. Yesterday was a terrible day. Ellie looked at me furtively. Well, let's begin. But seeing the way she was playing and singing, I would never have said she didn't prepare. As for me, an extra day of rehearsing on my own clearly hadn't been enough. I was constantly making mistakes with the new songs, especially at first. Several times we'd have to start over because I'd lost the rhythm, or forgot what I had to play. Are you alright? That was a pretty stupid question. I wasn't. Just a bit nervous. Don't look at me, I'm not nervous at all. Oh yeah. Her words sounded like mockery, but I just knew that Ellie didn't want to actually upset me. It was just her personality, or so I kept telling myself. But her ability to instantly switch track from one problem to another wasn't just admirable, but also annoying and a little scary. Jealousy? That was probably too simple an explanation, overlooking too many details. After about an hour, I finally relaxed a bit and found myself playing much better. And just then, one of the strings on my bass snapped. Gosh dang it. I grit my teeth. Oh, I should have checked the bass. No one's played it for a while. It's alright. I'll restring it, okay? I was ashamed to acknowledge it, but I couldn't do that myself. Thank you. I gave him the guitar. They say a broken string is good fortune. Ellie walked over to us and stood next to me. Really? No, I just made that up. She laughed and I found myself slightly offended. You know, I'm not really in the mood for many jokes today, and I think you know why. I didn't want to upset you. I'm not upset at all, except maybe with myself. So you're still worried about that maniac? I'm not worried about her. Those who don't oppose evil condone it, don't they? And of course in your world, all evil is personified by my grandfather. No, alright, I shouldn't have even started. Wait. I ignored her and went back to Ishida. Look, can you teach me to restring this? Sure thing. He gave me a wide smile in response. When the practice was over, the sun had already gone down. I didn't have any instruments or equipment to pack, so I quickly said goodbye to everyone and left the studio. Ellie caught up with me after about half a minute. Where are you running off to so suddenly? Nowhere, home. I stopped and looked at her wearily. I would have preferred to spend the rest of the day alone. So you're upset after all? I'm just tired, and I haven't slept properly for a while. Probably gonna collapse into bed as soon as I get home. I lied, even though I didn't want to sleep at all. Alright, bye. See you tomorrow, she said reluctantly. As soon as I came home, I went to bed with a book, another science fiction novel. I preferred hard science fiction, which dealt with the real problems of space. Although I also enjoyed adventure novels where interstellar flights and aliens were a little more than stage decorations. Maybe because it wasn't easy to find a really interesting book that went beyond anthropocentrism. I flipped through one page after another, and at some point I realized I'd stopped following the story. An image of an angry Kagome drifted before my eyes, laughing Ellie with a guitar in her hands, Irina with her malevolent smirk, the stern face of Kobayashi-jun, Catherine and Amitsu. I didn't even notice when I fell asleep. I'm sure she'll be fine. Niju. Can't think of it at the top of my head. That being said, we'll leave off here. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button. I cannot speak. I really can't. Like, comment, subscribe if you want. I will see you all in the next video. As always, goodbye.